April 26, 1986, started as an ordinary spring day in Soviet Ukraine.
But at 1:23 a.m., a catastrophic explosion tore through reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, unleashing a radioactive cloud that would forever alter the course of history. This is the story of the worst nuclear disaster the world has ever seen, a tragedy born not from technological failure alone, but from a deadly combination of human error, flawed design, and a system that prioritized secrecy over safety. Over the next 10 minutes, we will uncover the chilling events that led to the explosion, the heroic and often futile efforts to contain the fallout, and the enduring legacy of a catastrophe that still claims lives today. Stay with me, as we go deep into the heart of the Chernobyl disaster.
To understand the disaster, we must first look at the reactor itself.
Chernobyl's RBMK-1000 reactor was a Soviet design, powerful but inherently unstable. It had a positive void coefficient, meaning that if water cooling the core turned to steam, the reactor's power would increase instead of decreasing, a dangerous feedback loop.
On the night of the disaster, operators were conducting a safety test to see if the turbine could generate enough power to run the cooling pumps during an emergency shutdown.
The test had been delayed, and by the time it began, the reactor was operating at a dangerously low power level, about 30 megawatts thermal, far below the stable minimum of 700 megawatts.
To compensate, operators withdrew too many control rods, violating strict safety protocols.
At 1:23 a.m., they initiated the test and shut down the steam supply to the turbine.
But the pumps slowed, causing coolant flow to decrease.
The reactor's power surged, and an emergency shutdown button was pressed.
However, the control rods had graphite tips that initially boosted reactivity before inserting fully.
This design flaw caused a massive power spike, estimated at 100 times the normal level. The fuel rods shattered, and a steam explosion blew the reactor's 1,000-ton concrete lid off, followed by a second explosion that exposed the core to the air.
The explosion sent plumes of radioactive debris into the atmosphere, visible for miles. Firefighters arrived within minutes, unaware of the invisible danger.
Without protective gear, they fought fires on the roof of the reactor building, where graphite blocks were burning. The radiation levels in some areas reached 30,000 roentgens per hour, lethal in minutes.
Many of these first responders would die from acute radiation sickness within weeks.
Meanwhile, the core fire raged for 10 days, pumping out vast amounts of radiation. Helicopters dropped over 5,000 tons of boron, dolomite, sand, clay, and lead onto the reactor to smother the fire and absorb neutrons. But the effort was chaotic and dangerous. Pilots flew directly through radiation plumes to drop their loads, many absorbing lethal doses themselves. The Soviet government, true to its secretive nature, did not immediately evacuate civilians. The nearby town of Pripyat, home to 49,000 people, only received evacuation orders 36 hours later, on April 27. By then, many had already been exposed to high doses of radiation. The evacuation itself was surreal. Families were told they would be back in 3 days, leaving behind pets, possessions, and everything they owned.
They never returned. The radioactive cloud from Chernobyl didn't stay in Ukraine. It spread across Europe, contaminating large areas of Belarus, Russia, and Scandinavia.
Traces of cesium-137 and iodine-131 were detected as far away as Sweden and the United Kingdom. The Swedish government was the first to notice, detecting elevated radiation at a nuclear plant on April 28, which prompted them to alert the world. The Soviet Union then reluctantly acknowledged the disaster, but initially downplayed its scale. The fallout was worst in the immediate vicinity, with a 30-kilometer exclusion zone established around the plant.
This zone remains largely uninhabitable to this day.
The most dangerous radionuclides released were iodine-131, which has an 8-day half-life but is concentrated in the thyroid, causing a spike in thyroid cancers in children, and cesium-137, with a 30-year half-life, which contaminated soil and water and entered the food chain. Over 200,000 square kilometers of land were contaminated with cesium-137 above 37 kbq/m superscript 2, an area larger than the entire country of Belarus. The cleanup, known as liquidators, involved over 600,000 workers who built the sarcophagus, decontaminated the area, and handled debris. Many of these workers received significant radiation doses, and thousands have since suffered from related health problems.
In the immediate aftermath, the Soviet government tried to suppress information.
The International Atomic Energy Agency was only given limited access.
Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of people were relocated, their lives upended.
The social and psychological impact was profound. Many suffered from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The health consequences are still debated, but according to the UNSCR report, at least 30 cleanup workers died from acute radiation sickness, and some 4,000 thyroid cancer cases were linked to the disaster, primarily in children who drank contaminated milk. The WHO has estimated that in total, Chernobyl may cause up to 4,000 eventual cancer deaths among the most exposed populations, though other studies give higher numbers. The disaster also had political repercussions, contributing to the weakening of the Soviet Union's credibility and hastening its collapse. The cost of the disaster, in terms of cleanup, relocation, and healthcare, is estimated at hundreds of billions of dollars. The sarcophagus built over the reactor in 1986 was a temporary solution, and by the 2000s, it was deteriorating. In 2016, a new 32,000-ton steel confinement structure, the new safe confinement, was slid over the old sarcophagus, a monumental engineering feat designed to contain the reactor for the next 100 years.
Chernobyl fundamentally changed the nuclear industry. It exposed the dangers of flawed reactor designs, inadequate safety culture, and the prioritization of production over safety. The International Atomic Energy Agency and national regulators implemented new safety standards. Reactor designs were modified to eliminate positive void coefficients, and emergency planning was overhauled. Despite this, the shadow of Chernobyl lingers. It fueled public fear of nuclear power, leading to the phase-out of nuclear energy in some countries, like Germany. Yet, it also spurred a global movement for transparency and safety in the nuclear industry. Today, the Chernobyl exclusion zone is a strange place, a thriving wildlife sanctuary where wolves, boars, and even bears roam in the absence of humans.
It serves as a poignant reminder of the disaster's paradox, nature recovering while the land remains poisoned for centuries. The story of Chernobyl is not just about a nuclear accident, it is about human fallibility, the cost of secrecy, and the resilience of people in the face of unimaginable adversity. As we reflect on this tragedy, we must remember the lessons it taught us about responsibility, scientific honesty, and the profound consequences of our actions.
Thanks for watching. If you found this valuable, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos.